It's good to be back with you heading down the road. We've got some things we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about early childhood education and opportunities that are out there for you and your family that, well, I probably should have known about and been able to recommend to you, but I didn't. And so we're going to visit with Kim Fischer a little bit about that in just a second or two. Also, we're going to get a chance to talk to an individual that probably, it doesn't surprise me, some of what this individual is going to talk about. And that is in the area of music and memory. Frank Fitzpatrick is someone who's a music and wellness expert. And, we're going to talk about Tony Bennett and how Tony Bennett is struggling with Alzheimer's and yet is able to sing all the songs that he normally could have sung. I had an opportunity to meet Glenn Campbell once, right at the end. And of course, Glenn Campbell had struggled with some substance abuse. And when I got there, I was to introduce him at the casino. That's why I was there, down in Hankinson. And when I got there and I was visiting with him, someone was trying to interview him for just a little liner. Like, hey, this is Glenn Campbell, you're listening on da-da-da-da-da, right? And he couldn't do it. He couldn't pull it off. And I'm sitting there waiting to meet him, and I'm like, is he using substance again? Is he in a good place? That's how my mind went. Well, turns out that he had Alzheimer's really bad and that he was on kind of a farewell tour. He couldn't communicate. You couldn't hardly speak to him. He got on stage, he grabbed that guitar, and it was just like never before. I mean, just like always in his life. Now, the difference was he couldn't remember which song he had just played, but once his family started playing, and it was his daughters that were his backup band and his sons. But once they started playing, he just kicked in. I mean, he just kicked in and became that individual that everybody knew Glenn Campbell to be. So this doesn't surprise me. But we're going to visit with Frank Fitzpatrick about that. We're going to find out why it is, and if in fact this could help so many other people that we have in our lives that struggle with Alzheimer's. The minute I read about this, I thought, I've got a brother-in-law, somebody near and dear to me with Alzheimer's, and whether or not this might at least bring him back to the family, where the family is no longer just communicating with someone that they don't get a chance even to say hi to, where he would understand them. And so it's a dreadful disease, and it's something that takes this person who is so important in people's lives and takes them away. And so it's just incredibly vicious and incredibly unfair. And we'll get a chance to visit about that a little bit later. But National Spokesperson and Senior Vice President of Communications at Waterford.org is Kim Fischer. And Kim's good enough to share some of her time with us. Kim, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Oh, yeah, great to be here.
Want to talk a little bit. One of the people that I work with on this show has a 5-year-old and I think a 2.5-year-old. That's her children. And of course, we're all thinking about early childhood education. We're all thinking about what's out there. When she came in with this program and she started talking about this, she was so excited. Number one, because she didn't know anything about it, now could access it. Number two, just what the goal was. I think it's best described by you, Kim. Tell people what we're talking about.
Sure. So the Waterford Upstart program is what's available in North Dakota, and that is our at-home early education program that prepares children for kindergarten this upcoming fall. And so it's all done at home with the family. We give basically families all the tools they need to make it easy for them to help their child prepare for kindergarten. So that includes a family coach to help them through the process, answer any questions, make phone calls to check in with the families, but then also a computer and internet access to go along with our adaptive personalized software for the child that they use 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. It's super simple, and it really kind of gets the parents involved in early education right off the bat, which is amazing.
So let's go back. You mentioned coach. That you have, is this a personal coach? Is this a coach where, hey, they can be in a room no different than a teacher? Walk me through what you mean by coach.
Sure. So our personal coaches, most of whom have either teaching or master's degree backgrounds in education, specifically early education, they are there just a phone call, a text message, an email away. Whatever the parent says is their chosen mode of communication. They're there to check on the family, to let the family know where the child might be falling behind, give them some really helpful tips on how to engage the child offline, because 15 minutes is not a lot of the day. But if the parents have all that they need to know to continue working with their child offline, then that really extends the education. And that's what the coach is there for. They call in to check on the families, but then if families get a hang up or a snag, they can call the coach right away.
So, number one, you've got somebody to jumpstart. Number two, then that responsibility, if you share that 15 minutes, falls back on you. It's just, to me, it's brilliant. Then you talked about computer. You talked about the ability to connect. Walk people through that.
Sure. So we are a nonprofit organization, and we actually got funding from the federal government to come to North Dakota. And then on top of that, with all of the funding that's coming out because of COVID, the state of North Dakota was able to give us even more funding to reach more families. And as we know, North Dakota is a very rural state. And sometimes getting connected to the internet is not the easiest thing. And maybe families don't have a computer that a child can use. Maybe they're using the computer for work from home. We want to make sure that there are no barriers to the child being able to utilize the program. And so with the funding that we have from the state, we're able to provide a computer and internet access along with the program at no cost.
That's absolutely amazing. A lot of parents and grandparents, you just got their attention. I will tell you that. You really did. I want to go back to funding from the federal government, the investment made. There's a lot of talk now about Build Back Better and early childhood education. Is this in place of that, or is this something that can work cohesively with that?
We see ourselves as fitting the gaps wherever they may be. And we truly believe that the only way to reach universal pre-K is to make sure you reach every single child. And unfortunately, for some areas, much like North Dakota, which is rural, having a brick and mortar option is not going to work for every location. And so we see ourselves as the option that will fit those gaps to make sure every child does have an option. And so we're really excited about the universal pre-K conversation because we have been doing this for so many years. We understand that there are gaps in being able to reach kids, and we just want to be a part of that conversation.
So I want to talk about curriculum a little bit. I've got a 4-year-old. And you've just given that 4-year-old all the tools. You've given him the computer. You've given him somebody that he can call teacher. You've given him somebody that he can call friend. What does that 15 minutes consist of? Are we talking about math one day and English the next day? I mean, what are we talking about with a 4-year-old child in this program?
Sure. So with our state funding that we've gotten from North Dakota, what that is it is 15 minutes of literacy. That is the expectation, 15 minutes, 5 days a week. And what that does is set the foundation. So they start recognizing their letters. We base in the science of reading. So that's like phonics, phonemic awareness. They start to recognize the sounds of the letters and they can draw them together. Our average graduate will walk into kindergarten reading at a nearly first grade level. So that's the expectation. Now, there's an additional 15 minutes that families can use that entails math and science. And I always suggest parents use both. It's only 30 minutes total. Obviously, with a 4-year-old, their attention spans are short. And so we always tell families to create a routine. Brush your teeth in the morning, do your reading. After lunch, we do math and science. Split it up during the day so that the kiddo gets both things. But, you talk to families that do both and they just see the explosion of understanding and learning in their children.
Okay, so you just got my attention even farther. The 15 minutes you just talked about, you can extend that to another 15 later in the day?
Correct. I mean, you can extend it at any point in time. If you have a child that you think has the attention span to sit there for 30 minutes, by all means, you could do it all at once and knock it out. But, we do like to limit the amount of screen time that a child is using. If a child is on the program for longer than we suggest, the coach will call the family and tell them, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so You don't want the child to get bored with the program. And so that's why I always say if you break it up into increments, it's a lot better.
Okay, I just, this is really intriguing. How did we not know about this? I mean, and that clearly lies with me, with people that are out there communicating to as many people, whether it's through my radio show or my TV show. I mean, I've got to do a better job. But I guess what I'm getting at, Kim, is how the heck did I know about this? Are we doing a good job of getting that out to the public so they know it's available?
You know, I will tell you and your media friends will accept the help whenever we can get it. We do send out press releases when we're starting new programs. Sometimes we'll get some coverage, sometimes we won't. We're grateful for whatever we can get. But really, it's because we are still fairly new to the state of North Dakota. We're only in year 3 of the funding that we've gotten, grant funding. And so, you know, first year, let's be real. Listening to all of the things I've just told you, a lot of families go, okay, what's the catch? Where am I going to have to spend money? This is too good. Like, it's got to be a scam. Once we get past that and families start utilizing the program, they realize this is great. And then they start telling their friends. But obviously, word of mouth takes a while. And so we do media outreach. We are on the ground, making partnerships with other nonprofit agencies whenever we can, going to food banks, going to, you know, clothing places, anywhere we can find families. So, but this kind of stuff, getting the word out is the best thing we can do.
There's always going to be parents that are negative, that believe that if you let Kim's group in, they're going to indoctrinate your children, or, you know, just spin this or spin that. And I want to give Kim a chance to address that because I'm sure it's come her way before.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you name it, we've probably heard it. You know, that's why I mentioned earlier with the screen time that we do limit screen time, because we have had folks say, I don't want my children in front of a screen. And we understand that. And we think that if a child is going to be in front of the screen, it needs to be educational. They should be learning something. It shouldn't be just junk food going into their head. So that's one thing. And another thing is, you know, I think a lot of people hear universal pre-K when we're talking about Build Back Better, and they think, you know, kids going to school at 4 years old, being dropped off at a center. And a lot of parents that we speak with aren't happy about that. Some parents need that because they need to go to work. They need their children to be somewhere. We understand that. But for the parents who, you know, don't want to do that with their child, this is something they can do at home with their child, where they can be engaged. They can be a part of the early learning process. And the thing about early learning is a child really needs to have some sort of foundation before they enter kindergarten so they don't start behind. And, you know, that's letter recognition, knowing how to count to at least 20, you know, knowing how to sound out letters, those, you know, those phonics, those trying to start to sound out those words. If they don't know some of those simple, basic things, they're going to be behind, and they're going to recognize it. They're going to know right off the bat that they're not where the other students are, and that affects their confidence. And so all we want to do is provide that early learning foundation for the child. So when they walk into school, they're going to be confident. They're going to be ready to read.
So how much of the curriculum do parents have a say in? Can they cherry pick? Can they say, look, I want to focus on this, I'm okay on that? I mean, how big of a partnership is it?
So with our program, it's an adaptive, personalized program for the child. And so what we do is set that curriculum based on the child learning how to read. And so it will go along with the child. Wherever they have struggles, that's where the program will focus until the child hits mastery, and then they'll move on. Now, we also do have mindfulness set up into our program. And what mindfulness is it talks about emotions and feelings that a child is going to experience, especially when they get outside of the house, away from mom and dad, around other children, and around teachers. And so those are discussions about how to handle emotions like jealousy, how to handle sharing, how to handle being angry. What is that feeling, and what do you do with it? So very much like, you know, Mr. Rogers type stuff that you would typically see. We have little animals that deal with these types of emotions. And so we call it our mindfulness criteria. That's really woven into what the child is learning in terms of literacy or math and science.
You said that when they move on, when that child is there, That would mean to me that there's some level of testing at some point, or does the coach see it? I mean, how do you know when that child's ready to move on?
All of the above. So the great thing about our program is that the program is constantly learning where the child is and adapting to that. So it's almost like little mini tests, but the child has no idea they're being tested. It's just a part of the program. And so all of that information gets dumped into a back end where not only the coach, but the family can see what the child is learning, and it graphs to show where the child is in terms of mastery, what they've mastered, what they need to move on to next, where they might be falling behind. And then we have an entire list of resources that parents can go to. They can print it out. If they're struggling with the letter T, you can print out a little book, all of it with focusing on the letter T. And so it's really, in my opinion, a fantastic way for parents to get involved in what their child is learning. We always suggest parents keep an ear to what it is their child is doing so that they can then talk about those things offline. It sets the pace that's good for the child, and then the parents can take over from there.
I'll go back, Kim, to the example of my grandchildren. I'm sitting there oftentimes. During the summer, we'll be at the lake and they'll be using their touchpad, and it looks to me like all they're doing is playing games. And then at times, I'll go check it out, and actually the type of games they're playing, they're learning, and they're being used to learn. So apparently my daughters aren't as foolish as I thought they were growing up, but that's a whole aside. Is that how this works? Because to put a child, even if it's 15 minutes or a half hour in front of a screen and not have them have fun doing it, it just seems to me you're going to fail. And so how does it appear to the child?
Yeah, if it's not fun, you're absolutely going to fail. We will say that over and over again. For the child, this is a fun process. One of the things that we don't often think about is that humans love to learn. We truly do. We enjoy learning. It just gives us a sense of doing something, of feeling committed to something. But all of our programs are games. And then we also infuse songs in there that the children really love. We always hear at the end of a semester, a parent saying, if I have to hear this song one more time, that they will remember these songs for years. I interviewed a family where the child that used the program back in the day was now 16, still remembered the songs. And so that's the part of it, is you make it fun, you make it enjoyable for the child so that they will continue to learn.
So I'm going to go back to the funding, because you said that North Dakota put money behind this as well. Is it a certain percentage? Did the feds say, look, you can have 75%, North Dakota, I need 25% to utilize this? I mean, how does the money break down? Is it by special need of the child? Is it just general for everyone? Walk me through the bill when it comes to this.
All right. So I have to give you a little bit of history before we can get to the state. So basically, we got funding. It was called an EIR grant. And this grant gave us funding to come to the 5 Western states that had no state funding for early education. So that's, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Idaho. So we got $14 million spread out across those 5 states to do the program for 2 years in each state. So that's initially how we came to North Dakota. As we started going, we introduced our program to the Department of Education and other state departments and said, hey, here's what we're doing. Here are the results. We want you guys to be aware. And so the state superintendent realized right off the bat how helpful our program was. So then when COVID hit and departments of education started getting this extra funding, they had to use it in different ways. Early education was one of the ways that they were supposed to use the funding. And so knowing that our program was already working for children in North Dakota, the state decided to put some of that funding, it's called gear funding, towards Waterford Upstart. And so with that funding, we were able to reach 800 children. So we're still registering the last few. We only have just a short time left. So if parents are interested, they need to really get on it like today. But that's what ended up happening. We had 400 children this year that were still funded through those federal EIR grant dollars. And then we got an additional 800 that were added on with those state funding dollars.
That's, to me, amazing. 800 children is a good start, but obviously both you and I would like to see it be far more. And you have the opportunity to make it be far more. Kids learn at their own rate. You and I both know that. Yeah. What do you get feedback? You mentioned the Department of Education, Superintendent Baszler here. I'm assuming is one of the people you're coordinating with. Yeah. But you know, when they get in that classroom, when they get in front of that kindergarten teacher, that first grade teacher, you must get some feedback from them. Because it seems to me that if one child doesn't, the other child does, it'd be easy to tell how far they've gone in being ready to be in that classroom. What are you seeing so far there, Kim?
We hear from teachers regularly that they can always tell an Upstart kid, just because they are already used to, kind of having a routine. They are far ahead of many other children in terms of understanding how to read, knowing their letter recognition, knowing their number recognition. We hear it over and over again that teachers can tell an Upstart kid. We actually had that on our billboards last year. Teachers can always spot an Upstart kid. And so, yeah, we do hear that. Absolutely. And what we also hear from teachers is that Upstart students come in with more engaged parents, which is vitally important, especially during times like right now, during COVID. It is so important for the teacher and parent to have a good relationship. And parents who've had children on the Upstart program know how their child is learning, know how their child is doing, and they feel comfortable engaging with that teacher to let them know, hey, here's where my kiddo is at right now. What can we work with him or her on when we're at home?
Kim, what if that child's at daycare? What if the child is with 10 other daycare students, whatever term you want to use? Right. What if that time that they're able to utilize comes through their time at the daycare?
So we partner with daycare facilities, Head Start facilities. It really depends on what works for that facility. So for instance, if the facility is okay with the child bringing their laptop in and doing Waterford Upstart, great. We actually even have facilities that tell their parents, I want you to register for this program because this is my literacy element that they're going to learn in our daycare program. That works as well. Or the child can go to daycare during the day and then they come home with mom and dad and do their homework, which is Waterford Upstart, at home with mom and dad. So mom and dad can still be a part of the learning process. It really doesn't matter what a family setup is. We work into it in a very easy and seamless way.
It would also seem to me, North Dakota, a large number of people in North Dakota homeschool. And it would seem to me that even the individuals at homeschool that might not like how that child is at in the public education system, that, this is an opportunity to utilize that in their home as well.
Right. I get the opportunity to go and talk with families and interview families who have used our program. And I've interviewed a number of families who have decided, after Waterford Upstart to homeschool their children. And this, they've said, is a great way to start the foundation. And the fact that these families are already engaged in this idea of homeschool, I find that those families are even more engaged with Waterford Upstart and utilizing the resources that we provide and really expanding that education offline as well. And so, yes, we see those families come through our program too.
Where do they get in touch with you if they want to be part of all this, Kim?
Super simple, waterfordupstart.org. And like I said, we are closing registration in the next couple of days. And so I would really suggest folks hop on like today and get started, because the earlier your child starts, the better off they're going to be by the time they get into kindergarten this fall.
And clearly you're off to something big. So I appreciate you spending time with us.
Oh, so happy to be here. Thank you so much for getting the word out. Hopefully a couple of parents listen and sign up.